can see we're working with very much two different animals. Okay, so we decided to work with. So why did I choose the topic of the learning brain? So my intention was for everyone to think about teachers as brain changers, because ultimately teaching is the only profession that we change brains every day in the learning environment. Okay? So teachers are essentially brain changers. So what inspired me with this talk was a book by called The Student's Brain. It's by Kathy Nundy. What she highlights are essentially 4 key aspects around brain research as applied to the learning context. So first of all, we consider attention. If you aren't paying attention, none of that information is essentially registering in your memory system, and you can't retrieve that information. So you can think of your memory very much like your computers. You have to input information, it processes it, and provided you've got a very good file organizing system, you can retrieve it quite easily. Okay? The other aspect I want you to consider is along the lines of we have to move students to higher regions of the brain in order to be effective in the teaching and ensure that learning takes place. So the higher regions of the brain, the frontal lobes, the last area of the brain to reach full maturity, only tends to be around 14 and above. Okay? The last important aspect about brain research in the classroom has to do with the power behind the lower levels of the brain. So the spine, the spinal cord, and the cerebellum. So previously, we pretty much have done all our research around the frontal lobes, executive functioning, the high levels of the brain. More recent neurological research is highlighting that the spinal cord and cerebellum actually also have quite a lot of capacity for learning and memory. The last point has to do with the development of plasticity and how the adult brain is a lot more plastic than we initially thought. So those are the 4 key points around brain research in the classroom setting. Now from that, you can extrapolate to the teaching implications. So here we have the learning pyramid. So many of you might have heard of Bloom's taxonomy, which divides learning into different areas from defining to understanding to critical thought. So why is brain research so important? Is it essentially has highlighted that learning that is traditional, so very much lecture style, very self-study, reading, audiovisual, has less percentage when it comes to retaining knowledge. Whereas more team-like experiential learning highlights much more retention of knowledge. So you can see that listening to a lecture, so you probably will only remember 5% of what has happened this evening. Okay? Whereas if you were given experiments or done an experiment or experiential learning, you probably would have remembered 90%. Okay, so the more we learn about how the brain functions, and the more we map that onto learning and our teaching strategies, the more efficient learning takes place in our students and understanding. So underneath the whole learning is neurons. So neurons are essentially the nerve cells within the brain. So your brain is made of lots of neurons. So this slide essentially highlights what a firing neuron is. So it's based very much on chemical transmission and electrical. Okay, so this is not really a science lesson, so I'm not going to unpack the nitty-gritty. But what I will highlight that is essentially that when one neuron is essentially linked to other neurons and the chemical transmission, and a nerve signal has to work down the axon. So these little branches are the dendrites. Inside there's a cell body. Around the neuron is something called the myelin sheath. So what that does is it insulates and allows for the fast delivery of the message. Okay, these axon terminals are the point that links to other neurons. But it's very important to highlight, neurons don't touch. So this is your presynaptic, and this is your postsynaptic. There's this space. Okay, the term is called the synaptic cleft. So what communication happens? This nerve impulse is sending the signal from the dendrites down the axons. Once that happens, these like it's called little buttons, they are neurotransmitters. Okay, we have a whole range of them. They're all different functions. For learning and memory, acetylcholine is a very important neurotransmitter. And then that's released into this cleft, and then this release allows for the message to be sent to the neuron. Okay? So essentially, how does the brain change with learning? So central to this process is the neurons themselves, so their structure, the chemical, and the nerve impulse signal, but also the number of synapses. So the more dendrites, so the more the little branches, the more learning that you are capable of and you've achieved over time. So dendrite growing and pruning. So I'm sure many of you have seen these like little furry little things. Kids like to play with them. My niece adores them. She always is bouncing it around. So I've decided that that might be a nice analogy to consider dendrites. So the more dendrites you have, the more synapses, the more nerves are firing. Okay, so there's more learning, consolidation. As we age, we go through this process of pruning. So this is normal as part of the aging process. So the pruning means that we have different synapses. So the more we use, the more those connections and those pathways are stronger. But it doesn't mean that over pruning, over age and normal process of aging, that our brain loses a sense of plasticity. Because essentially what the brain is doing from here to there is they are specializing the circuitries. So the ones you don't use, you use, whereas the ones you use become more enhanced. So that's, pruning does have an adaptive function. So ineffective or weak connections are pruned. So these orange dots on this slide represent multiple synapses of a single neuron. So the more you practice, the more learning and environment enriching experiences you accumulate through life, the more of these dendrites you gain. And learning is lifelong. There's no end to it. So what we may lose in pruning as a normal part of the aging process, we gain via interconnectivity. So the more strengthening of the existing pathways or consolidating. So when you link old knowledge or something you already know with a new skill. So those are the two aspects. So it's around continuous learning and environmental enrichment. So what are the 5 rules of the brain you can take away from this evening? Hopefully it's the 5% you remember. So dendrites grow only from what's already there. So you have to have a foundation. Dendrites grow for what is practice. Okay? As you practice, skills become more automatic and it becomes easier to practice the goal or learn something. So if you're very good at learning languages, you subsequently can learn other languages easily. You've established a foundation. Dendrites grow from stimulating experiences. So there's got to be experiential learning. Emotions affect learning. So what happens with emotions is your limbic system's involved. So your limbic system is made up of a lot of structures. One of the very important ones is the amygdala. So what happens when you're highly stressed? The amygdala is not able to take the information you're processing and understanding and transfer that to the hippocampus. So the hippocampus is important for your working memory, so your ability to hold information and do something else simultaneously, so you hold and do a maths calculation. And then that process, once it's practiced with via rehearsal, goes to long-term memory. If you don't rehearse, that information disappears. It's essentially decays. Use it or you lose it. So if you don't practice and you don't continuously exercise your brain, those neurons do disappear, they become pruned. So it's always important to keep on learning. Okay? So why teachers' brain changes as a way of concluding? So stress, confusion, and perceived threat can minimize the brain's capacities. So if a person is under severe anxiety, under stress, the amygdala is not allowing them to consolidate, process, store, or even retrieve information. You must create a safe and secure climate and healthy physical environments. So this is very much a context-dependent learning. You have to be in a quite quiet space to learn. You can't have too many distracting information. Multi-sensory experiences. So the more you can engage different modalities of learning, auditory, kinesthesia, visual, all the aspects of how different people could learn is critical. Hook new ideas to prior understandings and personal experiences. So this could be called a flashbulb memory. So you can many people would be quite familiar with maybe the death of Michael Jackson or 9/11. You can probably all remember what you were doing that day, if you were to think back. Okay, so multiple opportunities to actively process new learning, and for teachers to consider that different people learn in different ways. So you've got to be quite flexible in how you approach tasks and how you present tasks. So it orchestrates opportunities to apply new learning in real-world settings. So that's essentially what I interpret as transformation and bringing research of the brain into a teaching and learning environment. Thank you.